The prairie night carried a restless wind, tugging at the loose boards of the old barn where Matthew Kane, a cowboy with years of trail dust in his bones, paused from his work and frowned at the sound of muffled sobs breaking through the silence, the kind of broken crying that didn't belong to the coyotes or the wind, but to someone who'd given up trying to fight the weight of the world. And when he followed it, lantern swinging low, he found her crouched in the corner behind a pile of hay, her dress torn, her face streaked with dirt, her shoulders shaking as she whispered again and again, "Don't touch me, don't touch me, I'm filthy," the words carrying not just shame but a terror that cut straight through Matthew's chest, and for a long moment he stood frozen, the sight of her unmooring something deep inside him. For he'd seen plenty of hardship on the frontier, men broken by war, women worn thin by hunger, but this was different. This was someone who believed she no longer had the right to be touched by kindness, and Matthew, though rough and scarred, himself lowered his lantern and knelt slowly, careful not to spook her, speaking in the steady, gravelly tone of a man who knew patience. "I ain't here to hurt you, miss, I just heard cryin'." But she shook her head violently, curling tighter into herself, sobbing harder, "I'm not clean. Please, don't look at me." And it was then, against every instinct to back away and give her space, that Matthew reached out not to grab, but to gently brush back the tangle of hair that clung to her face, the strands greasy with dust and tears, and in that simple act, he saw what she could not, the fragile beauty beneath the dirt, the strength still living in her eyes, the soul fighting against the lies she'd been forced to believe. And when she froze at his touch, he whispered firmly, "You ain't filthy, you're human, and out here that's worth more than gold." And though she sobbed harder, hiding her face in her hands, Matthew's heart was already set, because whatever past had driven her to this barn, whatever cruelty had branded her unworthy of touch, he wasn't about to let it finish her, not while he still drew breath. And so he sat with her as the lantern light flickered low, the storm gathering outside, his silent vow anchoring the night that come morning, she would know she wasn't alone anymore. Morning blood across the horizon in streaks of crimson and gold, the prairie alive with the sound of cicadas, and Matthew Kane rose from the hard barn floor where he'd sat guard through the night, his rifle propped against the wall, his hat pulled low, though his eyes never once strayed from the trembling figure still curled in the hay, her fevered sleep filled with restless murmurs of names, places, and horrors that painted a picture Matthew didn't need full detail to understand, for out here in the lawless stretches between towns, men carved power not by law but by fear, and more than once, Matthew had seen women bear the weight of that cruelty until they broke. But when she stirred awake, coughing into her sleeve, flinching as though expecting his hand to strike instead of offer, Matthew crouched again, placing a canteen and a hunk of bread before her, speaking plain, "Eat, drink, and then if you want me gone, I'll ride out and you'll never see me again." And for a long while she stared at him, eyes red-rimmed, lips trembling, before whispering, "Why?" the single word so raw with disbelief that Matthew's chest tightened, and he answered simply, "Because no one deserves to be left in the dirt." And though she shook her head, muttering, "You don't know what I've done, what's been done to me. I'm ruined," Matthew's voice hardened. "You ain't ruined, miss, you've been wronged. And there's a difference." And the words seemed to rattle her, because tears welled again, but she drank, she ate, and slowly, piece by fragile piece, her story spilled like a wound torn open, a town swallowed by corruption, men who took everything from her family and left her alive only as a reminder of their cruelty, branding her with shame until she believed it herself. And Matthew listened, every word stoking a fire in his gut, because this wasn't just her burden anymore. Not after she spoke it into the open, and as the day stretched long, he saddled his horse, lifting her gently despite her protests, settling her into the saddle in front of him, his arm firm around her waist as he told her steady, "If you're filthy, then so am I, because we're ridden the same road now." And though she stiffened, though shame still clung like chains, the faintest flicker of trust sparked in her trembling frame as they rode, the wide horizon unfolding before them. And Matthew knew that if those who hurt her came looking, they'd find not a broken woman hiding, but a cowboy ready to burn the world to ash before he let her fall again. The ride stretched into days, through rivers swollen with spring rains, across mesas where the coyotes sang at dusk, and into towns where eyes followed them with suspicion. For a cowboy carrying a woman, half broken in his saddle, raised whispers. But Matthew Kane never faltered, never let her slip, his steady hand brushing her hair aside whenever shame pulled, her gaze down until the whispers turned to silence, and the silence turned to respect. For in the way he carried her, folks saw not scandal but devotion, and yet danger was never far. For the men who had left her sobbing in that barn weren't done, their shadows stretching across the land like wildfire. And one night, as the stars burned cold and bright, the crack of gunfire split the dark, bullets tearing through the camp Matthew had made by the river, and the girl screamed as men on horseback thundered in, faces twisted with greed and cruelty. But Matthew was already moving, his rifle cracking like thunder, his voice a roar as he dragged her behind the rocks, shielding her with his body, shouting, "Stay down, darlin', this ain't your fight no more." And the battle raged fierce, fire lighting the night as lead tore the air, Matthew fighting with the fury of a man who'd finally found something worth dying for. And when the last rider fell, silence returned, broken only by the girl's sobs as she clutched at him, begging, "Why do you fight for me? I told you I'm filthy, I'm ruined." But Matthew, bloodied and breathless, brushed his hand through her hair again, tilting her chin until her eyes met his. And in that moment he spoke the words that shattered the lie she'd carried like a brand. "You're the strongest soul I ever laid eyes on, and if you're filthy, then this whole damn world is too. 'Cause I've never seen beauty shine brighter." And as dawn rose on their weary figures, she broke not into sobs of shame, but into tears of release, her chains falling away as she leaned into him, and Matthew held her steady, knowing that the road ahead would not be easy, but also knowing that together, they'd ride it stronger than before. And friend, if this story stirred your heart, if Matthew's grit and her resilience kept you hooked till the end, then don't just ride off now, hit that subscribe button. Stay with us on this trail, because there are more Wild West stories waiting, stories of courage, redemption, and the kind of beauty that survives even the harshest dust storms, and we'd be honored to have you ride with us for the next one.